Welcome everyone to this Carson International Miller Thomson webinar. What's all the talk about CARM? The CARM acronym representing the Customs Assessment and Review Management Program. And today is the last day of summer. My name is Dan Kisselback, and with me is Dave Pentland, Carson International. This is one in a series of webinars that occur monthly on hot customs and trade topics. We've been providing these webinars for some time now, and we thought that it would be a good idea to talk about this particular topic because it's on the horizon, it's in the mix, and it will be implemented next year fully. So on to the next slide, please. Yeah, so my name is Dan Kisselback. I'm a partner with Miller Thomson. I lead the trade and customs practice nationally within the firm. And just because I'm a lawyer doesn't mean that I'm providing legal advice in this particular context. It's information. And if you need legal advice to deal with a particular situation, please seek out competent legal counsel. And Dave Pentland needs no introduction, but over you, Dave. You and your business, Carson International, being engaged in international trade and customs for many, many years, and say a few things about yourself.
Yeah, good morning on the West and good afternoon to anyone joining us in the East. Yeah, my name's Dave Pentland. I'm the Vice President of Compliance with Carson International. We're a Canadian and a U.S. customs broker, and also we're a medium-sized international freight forwarder. So I enjoy bringing these topics to the web out there and interested parties. And Dan, it's always a pleasure to join you. So back to you.
Thanks, Dave. So the CARM system or program, for the uninitiated like myself, it seems a lot like what has been introduced elsewhere. For example, in the US with the ACE portal, in Canada, we have for the tax system, My Account for businesses and individuals. So really what we're talking about is a portal to access data and information for customs purposes. Is that about it, Dave?
That's a pretty good summation, yes.
All right. And so you've gone through this in nitty-gritty detail because this is something that's going to be near and dear to your heart as a customs broker. And you say, don't panic. You'll let me know when to panic?
Yes, I'll let you know when to panic. Yes.
Right. Okay. So there's no deadlines other than spring of 2022. What's happening in 2022?
Well, let's leave that for a surprise. So let's get started on it, and I'll kind of walk you through some of the. I'd like to. Well, first we'll take a brief history and background on CARM. I'm going to do a spoiler alert. If anyone has listened to a Carson presentation, we've done these for some of our bigger accounts, then this is going to be exactly the same. So spoiler alert: if you participated in one of those, you could probably take back the next 45 minutes. If you have a particular question that you want to reach out to me and ask you about, because there's been some intricacies that have gone on with CBSA and how to sign up, or if you're having problems setting up your portal, drop me an email, give me a call, and I'd certainly like to help you. So we're going to take a look at first steps in registering your own CARM portal with CBSA. Then we're going to take a look at delegating authority and who has access to your portal, who within your company, and also outside service providers. Then we'll take a look at phase 2, and this is really where the crunch comes, and that is the panic starts May of 2022, and it's to do with the surety bonds for importers. So we'll take a look at that, and then we'll get away of takeaways and action points. If you've got any questions, comments, answers at the end, by all means, I'll try and address them. If I can't answer them, I could certainly get back to you and research them a little bit. So next slide. So this graphic is not a new one. This is an old one. I use it. CBSA published it back at least 3 years ago. And I commend what the government of Canada and CBSA are trying to do. I don't totally agree with everything and how they're putting it in place. However, I do agree with what they're trying to do. So really, they're trying to look at a massive paper burden that brokers and importers and trade lawyers like Dan, we've been mired in this, and they're changing and trying to bring themselves into the digital era where everything's available online in a secure portal where you can get information from CBSA about your imports. Very, as Dan mentioned, very similar to the ACE portal in the United States, which has been in place for about the last 3 years, where importers in the United States can access their information for their imports through a portal with their service providers and take a look at it in real live time. So it's a great program that's going ahead. The government of Canada has said that this process is supposed to save the government of Canada $2 billion and cost $341 million. You know, just being in a post-election hangover status today, I think maybe those numbers might be reversed. To me, it seems like it's maybe costing us $2 billion and saving $341 million, but that's something to be discussed at a later date. So let's take a look at the next slide. So the background of CARM. CARM is mainly about accounting and has nothing to do with release of shipments from customs. So the CARM is really financially based, and it will be a great information tool to see live information once you sign up on the portal going forward on all your imports and also your responsibilities and obligations in a monetary basis, both for duty and GST with CBSA. Ultimately, when CARM 2 takes place, it's going to shift the financial burden from when goods are released from customs control, from the customs broker, because right now, most of those imports are lodged against a broker's bond onto the importer's bond. And we'll talk about that a little when we get into phase 2. CARM also forces all importers to deal financially with the CBSA rather than going through their customs broker. This is a radical change from what has transpired probably over the last 100 years, where importers, most of them, other than very, very large importers, have always dealt with their brokers through the Brokers Act as a clearing house where the goods are lodged on the, and technically the broker is responsible for paying any duties and GST. That responsibility is going to shift 100% to importers. And those are importers of all sizes, from infrequent e-commerce to personal imports to large importers. You'll be dealing directly with paying CBSA directly. And I talked about the last one. So next slide.
Just one question there, Dave.
Certainly.
For someone that's not really overly familiar with this, you know, CARM phase 1 is being implemented now, right?
Correct.
And looking at phase 2 in 2022, where the burden will be shifted from the brokers to the importers in terms of their obligations to.
Right.
What is phase 1 really all about? Just accessing the information on the portal?
Strictly accessing information. That's it.
And can you access the information in order to do corrections and possibly appeals and so forth, or what is the use of that data?
Right now, the corrections and appeals aren't in the system, but they will be available shortly. We haven't got a time frame for that. Right now, you can actually do ruling requests through the portal and ask questions. And really, it's just a window to look at your financial obligations going forward with CBSA. Right now, you can ask for rulings, but you're correct. In the future, all corrections and amendments will be done through the portal.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah. This is really first steps in setting the portal. Right now, that's a live login. You can actually go to that site and the process takes place. And if you were a Carson client, we actually have some live bodies behind our CARM at carson.ca, because when we get into the weeds a little bit, you'll see that there's some information there that not all importers will have, but the brokers certainly have. So if you're not a Carson client, you would reach out to your existing customs broker and ask them for information, and they'll help you set up in your portal. So next slide. So again, this is a slide from CBSA, and it's really on how clients portal and onboarding. And I'm not going to go into it a whole bunch because I'm going to look into a little greater detail, but it talks about if you were a brand new importer, your first stage would be getting a business number and setting your business up. And then from there, you'd set up a portal account. From there, you'd link in a business account, and then you grant access to employees and things like that. So it's really just a template that CBSA was showing. Here's the steps to how you start through it. So the next slide we'll look at practical purposes, how you actually set up your account. So when you go to that login portal, you'll see that accessing the client portal. So if you're accessing the client portal for the very first time, you'll click on this link and you'll find out that CBSA is doing a pretty good job at not allowing anyone to hide behind IP addresses and be anonymous when you're dealing with your import. So the information that's on the importer's portal is very proprietary, and it should be closely guarded, and therefore they want to know who you are. And so the very first time you sign in, the government of Canada is going to say, you decide how you'd like to deal with us, but we want to know when you log in that it's John Smith dialing in and you're allowed access into this company. And so they want to identify John Smith. So next slide, please.
David, it sounds like it's similar to the My Account system for Canada Revenue Agency, where you authorize your accountant or whatever, or yourself to go in and do the thing that you
exactly the same. So some people may already have login access. So if you're newly initiated and you don't have either a sign-in or a GC key with the government of Canada, there's two ways that you can set up the initial setup. You can actually go in, and I'm one of the partners that opened up Carson in the West some 38 years ago. And I'm pretty comfortable in my position at Carson, but when it asked me that if I'd like to log in through my bank, you know, I'm not really totally excited about doing that. You know, I looked at it and I thought, there's a TD logo. I'll click on the TD logo. And then I kind of paused going, do I really want to put my username and password in there so the government of Canada says, yes, we recognize Dave Pentland and that you're with TD Bank, and we'll allow you into the government portal. I'm just saying that maybe the government of Canada may have a security breach at some time. And so I'm just saying, I'm going to pass on that. I'm going to go in and get a GC key. So that's a government of Canada key. And let's set myself up in that realm. If you're comfortable going in through your bank account, so be it. You don't have to do the GC key. But most people I've talked to have said that they would rather probably set up a government of Canada key where they deal with the government of Canada and leave their identifying themselves for the government of Canada's purposes, anything to do with their financial institutions. So might be just on being paranoid, but who knows? So next slide, please.
Well, paranoia is an unjustified fear. So.
Yes. So yeah. So there's a list of all the banks, and if you'd like to sign in through those partners, you just click on it, and they'll give you a screen that comes up, and it's just like you're logging into your online banking. And if that's how you do it, you're done. You've already set up your key, and then you can go in to the rest of it is setting up the portal for your company, or allowing yourself access to the company portal. So let's go to the next slide. So this is the GC key. It's like anything else where you set in, you decide what your username is and password, set it up, and the government of Canada is going to go, we're going to identify who you are, that we know your name and who you are, and every time you log in, you'll go in through your username and password. So next screen, it's just going to go into some other questions as far as, so next slide, please. You just have to accept terms and conditions, some boilerplate, just saying you're dealing with the Canadian government. Next slide.
It's all the click
And-
wrap that nobody reads, right? So,
Exactly, and it's just probably, you know, a lot of it is really just, you know, it's just you're setting up, identifying who you are. So again, you create your username, create your password, make sure you jot it down somewhere. And they're going to have some recovery questions. So I think the next slide is talking about some recovery questions and answers and hints in case, you know, you're like me and you've got 100 and some odd different passwords and logins for various things that you deal in just in life. And once that's done, you click continue, and there you're now identified that you're John Smith. The government of Canada recognizes you, and you get to leave your banking information separate. So next slide. So next step is now you have the ability to go in and go into a CARM client portal. The CARM client portal is where you're going to go in and set up who you are. And now that you want to get into either setting up the account for your company, or you want to grant access to the information that your company has already set up the portal. So next slide. So again, you're going to go in. So now you're in the CARM client portal. You're going to set up your username and password specific to you gaining access to, or becoming the main contact on the CARM client portal. So you'll put your username information, contact information in there, security questions, preferences if you want French or English. And so let's go to the next slide. So this is where you take a hard stop. So if you have never set up, or your company has not set up their CARM portal, and this is the first interaction, you need to make a hard stop and say, who within our company do we want to make our business account manager? And it's basically your CARM lead. So this is the person that CARM and CBSA is going to, but this is also the gatekeeper to allow anyone else within your company to go into the CARM portal, and also outside service providers. So it's an important person. It needs to be a senior person within the firm, and they get complete read, write, and edit privileges, and they are the one that determines, they're basically the gatekeeper. You should also have a backup. So depending upon your business size, if you're a proprietorship, it's yourself. If you're a 10-person company, it may still be yourself. As it gets bigger, it should be bumped up the line. Now, we've done this with a number of our large clients, and each company seems to pick a different person that they want to make their CARM. Even some of the larger companies that we've dealt with, it seemed to be that the VP of finance wanted to know about this, but they didn't want to be that person. They want to delegate it down the line to somebody, but they wanted to make sure that they were fully had access to it, but on a daily basis, they didn't want to deal with it. So I'm suggesting that somebody normally on the finance and accounting side, this should be the person that allows access. However, logistics, supply chain people may need access as well. But again, they need to really take a look at what they want to do with the information and understand that they're going to be paying the government of Canada. So it's going to be somebody on the accounting side that's going to be authorizing, at the end of this month, I'm going to transfer this amount of money for these imports to CBSA. So I'm not saying that, because all of a sudden there was a lot of people that said, I'm going to make my supply chain manager, I'm going to make my logistics, my freight manager in charge of it. I don't think that's typically the right person, unless that person's heavily involved in also paying your duty bills to customs. So that's just, so the business account manager is the most important person in the company. A lot of companies we've done this presentation to directly have taken the information back to their senior management, run it through them and said, this is what it's about. It's an accounting function. And so who do we want as our business account manager? And then we'll go to the next slide and take a look at where we go from here. So also the big thing is that this is where you allow your service providers. So for customs brokers, come May, right now is the target date of next year, you're going to have to go in and say, if you're dealing with our firm, you'd have to say that Carson Custom Brokers, allow them into the portal because I want them to be clearing my goods. So also, if you're dealing with other express couriers and they're clearing some of your shipments, you're going to have to grant them access to it. If you have, if you get into an issue with customs, and I know with our firm, if we need some heavy lifting, we call upon Miller Thomson and say, here's a elevated position that's gone on with an importer. Can you discuss some things with them? They're going to be able to access the portal, which will be a big benefit. Instead of transferring, there'll be a lot of savings on time and money when people have to send documents and PDFs to people to get them up to speed on where they are. You would be able to grant access to them for that. And then at any point in time that you want to take away the access, you can actually take away the access if you no longer deal with that service provider, or if there's a job that's been finalized, you don't need them involved. But it's something you should really watch who you let in your portal. I would not let, there will be a lot of consultants that will say, let us take a look inside your portal, and if we can rummage around and find your duty, we'll give you the information back. You need to kind of gauge who you let in there, because there's going to be some very strategic and company private information, both on who you've been buying goods from, duty you've paid, so there'd be a lot of information. So it's just a little caveat that I wouldn't let everyone in, but only trusted partners and ones that you're working with who have the best interests of your firm at heart. So next slide.
So David, does it appear to you that the BAM is going to have the customs accounting control function to ensure that you're not randomly disseminating access or providing access, and that you're withdrawing access if you're no longer permitting service providers to do?
Yeah, so that's why that business account manager needs to be somebody in a business authority position that understands the information that's in there, and how strategic it is and confidential it is to the importer. So, there has been two Fortune 500 companies that I've done this presentation to, that they've decided that the top of the food chain, they want to be that person, and they will delegate authority, but they want to be the person because they need HR involved, because if somebody leaves their company because they've got 10,000 employees, they need that person's name taken off that portal right away. They don't want that person, because unless you take them off, they can leave and still have access into your portal. So it seems fairly simple from the onset, but the bigger the company, the more employees you have, you really need to know the group that has access into your portal. So,
yeah, so it could be a business continuity issue if you're not careful.
Totally, yeah. So, and also in the portal, you'll have data on credits issues due to claims and drawbacks. So if somebody went in and filed a drawback on your behalf, or there was a claim, you no longer is the government of Canada issuing checks unless you specifically ask for them in their specific circumstances. Right now, they're putting a credit in, and there's a big disconnect now when credits go in and importers can't see those credits. They actually right now have to go to the broker and say, did I get a credit? I got notified that there's money coming back. And we'd have to say, yeah, there's a credit applied on your account, and your next statement of account, those credits will come off. Well, that's a little unfair right now, because the importers up until recently haven't had a window to see actually those credits are on their account. It's pretty similar to managing your own personal bank cards, or credit cards. And so you'll actually able to see those credits. So, but all your financial undertakings done in relation to your business number are going to be signed to your company. So if your company has different business divisions and they're all under the same importer number with a different extension, they'll all be under the same importer portal. However, if you own individual companies with different importer numbers, each company will have to have their own portal. So, and the other thing is that, again, like I said, there's no historical data before sign up. So the government of Canada, everything's going forward, nothing's going back in time. So, that's where we're suggesting people get into setting their portals up between now and Christmas, set it up, get ready for next year, and then we'll look at phase 2. So next slide, please. So right now, this is a client portal that that eye chart there is really just, in our world, we can get in and see where our clients are and their statement accounts or SOAs with the government of Canada. This will now be available online to the importer. So the importer actually go in and see, right now we're showing our clients these because they're given to the broker. In the future, it'll go directly into the portal and you'll actually see the information. So next slide, please. And this is, you know, in a, this is what we get right now, where it actually show the imports and the amount of duty and GST, has the importer name. We get these, send these to our clients, and our clients right now are making payment off these. So it'll show the total payment. Now with the sign up also, under some of the security questions that the government will ask you in the login portal, they'll ask you for your SOA on a certain date. And also they may give you an entry number and ask you on that entry number, how much duty and how much GST was paid on your initial sign up when you're setting up your portal. Though that information sometimes is a little tough to get from your own company, but your broker, so you can reach out to your broker and say, you know, this is what I've got from the government of Canada. I can't set up my portal because this is a security question they're asking me on the first time. Can you help me with it? And so reach out to your broker. If it was us, that CARM at Carson.ca, there's a lady there that somehow she doesn't sleep for us, or there's a couple of ladies, I guess. And they just answer those questions and then you're able to fill it up. You only have to do it one time and then your portal will be set up. So next slide, please. So this is CBSA's graphic, but I actually like it because it's pretty simple to follow. It shows just delegation of authority. So it all starts with the importer, and the importer sets up their portal and they assume the roles within the portal. The number one being the business account manager, and then you can set up program managers, headers, readers, and unassociated users within the company. So if you have people within the company that just want to read the information, if you have people that you want to be able to download the information, the business account manager delegates authority to those individuals within the importing company. The importing company then also delegates which brokers you want to act on behalf of the client. And so you give that authority to the brokerage firm, and the brokerage firm, you know, in our case, Carson, once they give it to us as a company, then we have to decide which employees within our company we allow access into our importer's account via our account. And so therefore we need to make sure that if employees leave our firm, we take away access they have into our company and also into our importer's company. So, and this is really how the whole third-party service providers go. Consequently, the same thing is if you needed a trade lawyer and their assistance, you would, the importer would always have to delegate. It always goes back to the importer. The importer owns the portal and they decide who within their company and outside their company has access to that information. So next slide, please. So what does it mean to you? It really means for people is that the big thing is delegating authority in the CARM portal it's really important. It's just not a minor little portal. It's really your life and soul on your import side. So it's everything to do with the finances, and that you should really closely determine within your company who is the business account manager and a backup, and make that person truly understand how the CARM portal works and develop a relationship with their broker and overview what's involved. Again, in the beginning, it's all to do with visibility and paying the government and looking at it and how it operates. And until phase 2, which we're going to look at in a few minutes, there's no payment that's being done through that portal right now, unless you want to set it up and you have your own surety bond. So if you don't have a surety bond in place, you'll still be continuing to do the same process. You'll have visibility. So next slide.
So David, just to pause for a second there, advisors would be readers, is that correct? And so
Correct.
we would
Yeah.
be, if we had an issue, say we were instructed to carry out an appeal, or we were carrying out corrections, then we would gather the data as a reader and then decide what to do with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll use one without using their names. You know, we had a very complex anti-dumping case. It became very complicated, and obviously that CBSA needed somebody with a legal designation and some wherewithal and skill set like Dan. We brought Dan in. You'd be able to go in and develop a relationship with an importer, and all they would do is they would open up their window to you. You'd be able to go in and see the information that's in the portal right away without having to ask for PDFs and people pull up backup documents. So it's a great process. Yeah.
So David, do you actually register the clients, your clients, or do they register?
We get asked that a lot. We can't register the client's portal. The portal has to be done by the importer.
Okay.
Yeah. So phase 2, and this is the scary part. Okay, now it's going to get scary. I told you when it's going to get scary, it gets scary. So surety bonds with CBSA, and they have a spring 2022 target date. The CARM program has been around for about 8 years. I've been involved in at least 5 or 6 years, and the dates have kind of come and gone, and the government has just drawn the line in the sand and said, May of this year, the phase 1's in, and by, June of this year, phase 1 is happening. Phase 2 next year is happening with surety bonds, and that's just the way it's going to be. So they're proceeding along like that. For anyone that's importing in the United States, they've had surety bonds in the United States for, I'm going to say probably 70, 80 years. But the surety bonds and the importing process in the United States is a little bit different than in Canada. In the United States, with it getting into a lot of detail, is that the surety bond gives the individual the right to deal with US Customs, and you have to have a surety bond to bring goods in the United States. However, there are a few exceptions where you can actually have freight companies and brokers have their surety bonds, and they can register people under them. And so there's a few nuances that is in place. And also that world is an electronic world, and it's fairly big marketplace with a lot of surety firms. And really what it's doing is it's saying to the government of the United States, and as it will with Canada, is that they're letting the goods come into the country with a promise that the person owning that surety bond or the importer is going to pay for the duty and taxes and everything associated with bringing those goods in. If you don't have that in place, you have to pay cash to the US government or Canadian government at time of import. And so Canada has decided, hey, the US, they've got a great program, that why don't we take on the same program with these surety bonds? And so the US experience they've been doing this for 70 or 80 years, or in an electronic format the last 10 years. Unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. And also in the United States, they only have duty to deal with. They don't have a national taxation like Canada does with GST, or Europe with VAT, or GST is probably in most of the bankrupt countries in the world, other than the United States, of some kind of national tax. So that the US doesn't deal with that. So let's go to the next slide. So historically in Canada, brokers have put, when the goods arrive at the border and there's an entire truckload and there's 30 importers and there's 20 different brokers doing work for 30 importers, all of that is transferred onto the liability of the broker, and it goes onto our bond. So in our case, Carson, we've got right now there's a $10 million limit on bonds. We probably have about an $8 million limit. We just transfer those obligations onto our bond. The goods leave the border, get to wherever they're going, entries are processed, they're cleared, and the government of Canada knows they're not going to be out any money because it's on the surety bond of the broker. The government of Canada, having looked at it, says, you know what, we really should be looking at that And if we're going to allow people to continue to release prior to payment at the border, we're going to actually have all the importers. They should have their own surety bond. So that it's a monster number of importers, and to avoid delays at the border, you can't have people doing cash entries at the border. Otherwise, the whole supply chain breaks apart, because you have a shipment of 30 importers, and 20 would have importer bonds. And the other 10, if they don't have importer bonds, now that the entire shipment has got to go to bonded warehouse, be broken out. So it'll be a bit of a mess. So we're hoping, and the CBSA has assured us, that the surety industry and themselves will be ready to bring on these 200,000 importers with their own surety bonds by May of next year. So I'm starting to hear some rumblings in the last couple months that that May date might be now in pencil, and it might be moved a little bit, because the surety industry is now panicking a little bit, because they've never seen this volume of importers requiring surety bonds. And also, we're still in a very paper format. So this is the really next big step. And that's something that once you set up your portal, you should be watching closely when surety bonds. So we do have some clients who said, we want to get ahead of the rush. We'd like to get a surety bond set up. Right now, surety bonds for imports into Canada only require the surety bond. And the next couple of slides, we'll look at the how it's calculated. It's only required against the duty. Our government, in their infinite wisdom, has decided that the surety bond should reflect duty and GST. So everybody's bonds that are in place currently that will have to be increased come May of next year, or if there is another target date. So let's take a look at the next slide.
David, if I wanted to start up my own importing emporium, how long would it take to get a surety bond if I applied now?
A great question. So right now, if you decide to start your own company, there is no mechanism for small bonds for small importers. There's going to be a minimum bond. And right now in a paper process, it would take you, I would say, if you could get that done under 2 weeks, it would be rocket science. And that would be stealth mode. Most of them take at least a month, because what happens is currently we would, our client come to us, we put them in touch with the surety bond company. They would then go into the portal of the surety bond company, fill out a format of information that would go to the surety company, and in a lot of cases, they would ask for financials on the company. They'll take a look at it and see, are you worth the risk of giving you a bond? If you're worth the risk of giving you a bond, they'll say, yes, we'll process a bond. We'll send you a bond to wherever you're located. Sign it in ink. There's no docu-signing yet. We're open for that. Then you'll have to return that to the surety company. They'll take a look at it. They'll say, yes, they passed the test. We like their financials. Therefore, we're going to send this off to Ottawa, and we'll lodge the paper bond with the government of Canada. And the record breaking be 2 weeks. Most of them take a month, some much longer, because they're taking a look at financials. If you're a brand new importer, you're brand new, you have nothing. So you're just going to have to go to them and say, I need a surety bond. And they're going to say, well, right now, the minimum bond right now at this point in time is $25,000. So the surety company has to know, are you, Dan Kisselback, worth $25,000? And if they figure that you're a high risk, you've never imported before, there's no finances on it, chances are they probably don't want to issue a surety bond. So the big question is, freight companies and brokers have gone back to CBSA and said, what happens to this group of people that can't get a surety bond? Well, their natural thing, well, they just have to post a cash deposit. They can give us a cash deposit, and that cash bond will be $25,000. So we're saying, well, if they don't have $25,000, and the biggest, loudest voice on this are the express couriers. They're going to say every day companies start up, somebody goes on eBay, somebody goes on Amazon, they develop a company and they want to bring a sample in. You're telling us they have to either do a bond or a cash deposit. Otherwise, they have to go down to customs, clear the shipment in their own name, pay the money to customs. They said our warehouses aren't big enough. So that is a big, big issue right now. So great question. We get asked it a lot. So I'm not sure what's going to happen. You know, brokers, well, IE Canada actually approached CBSA and said through the government or to the government and CBSA, you may just become a country that shuts down entrepreneurs because you set up a process that makes it virtually impossible to be a startup unless you've got deep pockets. So stay tuned. I'm hoping that something comes about where they're able to do something to help smaller importers and get away from a $25,000 cash deposit or the ability to get a $25,000 surety bond. But as it sits today, that's the minimum bond amount, whether you do one import brand new or you do multiple imports before it gets into looking at your monthly volumes. So if you're an existing importer, they can take a look at what your monthly volume is. And if you've got $100,000 is your peak month for 2020, they would ask for 50%, 100,000, you need a $50,000 bond. So that's sort of where it is now.
So maybe if I'm a small importer and I only plan to, need a $10,000 bond, maybe I can negotiate, but I think it sounds like it's up for grabs right now.
You can't negotiate. It's 25,000. So, I mean, I'm hoping that, I'm not even sure what kind of organizations there might be some entrepreneurial things, but they need to get involved and lobby the government because to me, it's just unworkable. To me, it doesn't make any sense. So,
right.
So next slide. So the big things taken away for CARM release 2 is that you're going to have user account and link business portal accounts. But the real thing is that you just set up the portal and it's a visibility portal, and duties and tax liability are going to be shifting to you, the importer, right now, spring of 2022. If we can figure out the whole bond shirt. So right now, it's the government of Canada says they're not moving on May of 2022. And as of that date, every last importer, regardless of size, will need a surety bond or else a cash deposit with CBSA. Otherwise, somebody has to hop in their car, go down to wherever the port is and put in a live entry and pay customs. Now they're working on some provisions. They say that they're going to set up for e-commerce but it's not available. We haven't seen a working model of that yet. But it's, hopefully they're behind the scenes working on that. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. So right now, the big takeaway is decide on who's the business account manager within your company. So where is it going to be a controller, VP finance? Is it going to be a proprietor? Like you decide where it is and then set up your portal and then wait until the whole surety bond. I'm hoping that it gets stabilized. There's some big surety companies in the United States. We deal with a very large one in the United States. There's two major ones and there's a lot of smaller. They're now setting up in Canada, but they're still kind of throwing their hands up in the air going, wow, paper-based, how are we even going to do this? How do you even handle a volume of 200,000 importers and just all this, I can see the only people who are going to benefit are the express couriers sending these bonds and papers back and forth across the country. And then CBSA, how will they even handle the volume of these coming in and setting them up? So it's going to be, that's my biggest concern is this whole surety bond and next May. So as things happen, I'm sure we're going to be doing another one of these, probably with a surety company on the line saying, how do you get ready and how does everybody avoid the rush next year? So it's going to be a big issue. So next slide. So the most important slide today is chat. The sky's not falling. It's just the importing landscape's changing. So in Carson and Miller Thomson, we're going to help you navigate these things. But the big thing is there's no urgency right now. So a lot of companies have said, you know what, let's get the pandemic over, HR issues dealing with and that. And I'm going to set up my portal between now and Christmas. We'll set it up. I'll grant access to whoever my brokers are, and we'll move forward and we'll set things up. And let's just keep on there that come January 1st, let's kind of reach out and see what's going on the whole surety side, because knowing I'm going to need a surety bond in place. Some companies already have them in place, but you know, I've gone back to them and they're concerned because they have very large bonds in place right now. They're now being told that that surety bond is now going to be calculated with your duty and tax. And so that's a big change for anybody that has a surety bond, because the government of Canada thinks they're at risk on GST. I don't buy the argument. I think it should have been stripped out, but it's not going to happen. And again, all these importing is regardless if you're a resident importer in Canada or you're a non-resident importer based in the United States or somewhere else in the world, the same obligations will be that you'll be required to have a surety bond. So that's sort of where we're at right now. I don't know if you've got any comments, questions, suggestions. You can either, if we've got a few minutes, you can ask them. If not, fire off an email to either Dan or myself, and we'll get you through the CARM. So I think there's one more slide, possibly. There's you can reach out to either one of us, and want to thank you for your time today. So big takeaway, don't fear CARM, but be aware that next year on the whole surety side, there's a lot of work is got to be done by both our government, brokers, surety companies to make this all work. So stay tuned. So I'll turn it back to you, to Dan. Are there any comments?
Yeah, thanks, David. That was very informative. I guess the main message that I received right now is don't panic. You'll tell me when to panic. And that the time to get prepared for this CARM portal is now. If you can get your tackle in order, and I suspect that you are able to give advice and have been giving advice to people on how to get that done, that particular job done, getting on the portal, and then going forward, being ready in terms of getting the bond issue looked after, so that you know, you have to have your finances in order, or your you know, some sort of statement of account, so that you can be ready to get approval and do the things that you need to do to get the bond. So I don't see any other questions in the chat room. I guess with that, we should probably end. And I wanted to thank everyone for joining us for this Carson International Miller Thomson webinar. And we look forward to offering another presentation next month on another hot topic. In the meantime, be safe and be well. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot. Bye now.